Well, I'm finally getting to something I've been trying to get to for a long time. We had this fence blow down months ago during a winter storm. And well, we went to Arizona. I worked for about 6 weeks, had to get the garden going. That was a little more urgent just to get all that started. So now I'm finally getting to take care of this mess over here. Hey bud, how you doing? So now the first thing I got to do is haul this stuff back to the shop, because this fence was made out of these fence panels, and some of them kind of exploded. I'd like to repair these, partly because they're really expensive, and partly because that's just what I do. There's a lot of pieces. I better get the wagon. All right, new plan. I just noticed, I guess I sort of take them for granted, don't really see them anymore. I have these two panels right here, and we'll use them just to kind of make the little plastic Costco shed look a little better. Those are going to be a lot stronger than these when I put these back together. So I'm going to go ahead and use these two for the fence, and then once the fence is all put together, I do want to rebuild those and put them here to hide the Costco shed. So the first thing I got to do is one of my least favorite things to do in the world, and that's dig out the chunks of concrete that was holding the posts in. Now sometimes if posts have rotted off, I can kind of chip the decayed wood out and drive a new one in. But in this case, these just broke off. It was just really a severely windy day, so I'm gonna have to dig out all those chunks of concrete. All right, so the old post was right here. First I gotta get all these this ground cover stuff out of the way up on the edges of that concrete. Now before I start any digging, I'm going to go ahead and try with this thing to break it up some. It doesn't always work that well because when it's all kind of packed in the dirt, it doesn't really have any room to move, but I'll give it a shot. I'm getting there. I might be able to get that part of that post out. Getting close. See how that moves? Oh, it's looking out. That's not out, it's just broken. But we're getting there. Now I don't want to make this hole any bigger than I have to, because I'm going to have to fill it with concrete again. Hoping to leave a little spot where the post was, and set the new one right in there, filling concrete around the other side. It is so close. It's so loose in there. I don't know why it's not coming out. There it is. Got it. So I should be able to slide that new pole right in along this edge and just fill in concrete around that edge of it. Saves me a lot of concrete and a lot of digging. Now I went to the shop, got my big shop vac here, because I'm having trouble getting that last bit of dirt out of the bottom of the hole. So this should do it. Let's see how we're looking here. Oh, that is perfect. Just 2 more to go. Yesterday, before I went in, I took out the panel that was here, just moved it over, leaned it against that tree to get it out of the way. Now there's nothing left to do but keep chipping away at. All right, I think I'm getting it. Yes! 1 more to go. We'll see how we look. Awesome. That's working great. This was not as hard as that one. Move over there next and see if I have the same luck as I did here. That is the last one. Woohoo! All right, that looks great. It's working. Now it's getting pretty late, but I'm gonna run over to the hardware store, get some concrete, so I can get these things in today. Day after tomorrow, I can put the rest of the fence together. I ran a string line across here because I want these posts to be perfectly straight across the top. And I can use my level to make sure they're okay this way. Another thing I like to do is mix the concrete just a little on the dry side. That way when I pack it in like this, the post is pretty firm and I don't need to worry about bracing it as long as I'm not in a public area where people are going to be bumping into it or running into it or something. All right, that's it. I got them in. I really didn't expect to today. I don't want to work on the fence tomorrow because the concrete's not going to be real strong and I'm going to give it a full day where I don't touch it. Day after tomorrow, still want to be a little careful, but I should be able to start putting the panels back up again. So something good comes from everything. We discovered that after the fence blew down, we could see that little flower garden we have in the driveway from the kitchen window. So I'm going to put some windows in that fence, and then we'll still be able to see it. Now I have some really cool kind of wooden multi-pane windows that I took out of a remodel some years ago, and they've just been sitting around. I've been trying to figure out what to do with them. Now they're right over here in that stack. So I'm going to dig those out, bring them in the shop, and probably have to sand them and repaint them, but it's going to be so cool. This is why I tend to be a bit of a hoarder with old stuff that comes out of old buildings or that I tear out. It almost always comes in handy. Look at those, aren't those great? These are awesome. I got 3 of them. All right. Looks like they need a little more putty around them, the glazing putty. This one looks a lot better. That must have been the inside of the window. The outside looks pretty ragged too. So I'm probably just going to strip that glazing putty out and maybe put some caulk or something in there. I think that'll work just as well for this application. I'll take this off. There we go. Kind of work it one at a time. I've never really worked with wood windows, so this is all sort of new to me. I'm just going to take out the loose stuff. Anything that's not loose, I'm just going to leave in and paint over. It is just a fence. And you know me, my theory always seems to be put way more time into something than it's worth, but I am having fun with it. All Alright, this must have been the inside of the window because it looks pretty much intact. Okay, another thing I'm going to do is take my sander, sand all the flat surfaces on both sides because it's all going to get painted. And I'll do it with the electric sander as much as I can. Now I haven't really done a lot of paint removal, paint stripping in my time, aside from a little bit of sanding. And this isn't sanding that great. I'm going to try the heat gun here. I've never ever tried a heat gun to remove paint. I know that's one of the things that they're for, so let's see what happens. Oh yeah, that's definitely the way. Look how well that's working. So a couple things here, because I'm kind of learning as I go. First one is, I got to be more patient. I tend to rush things. Got to really wait for the heat to do its work. Otherwise I'm pushing too hard on my putty knife here and I'm kind of gouging the wood. And the other one is, since I'm not big on wearing masks, respirators, because it just fogs up my glasses, I got an electric fan running here to blow the fumes away. Alright, that's the first part. There's of course some residue left on there. Let's see if that sands any better. Oh, I also needed a new sanding desk. I use this one to sharpen my chisels. That's not the right way to sharpen chisels. Oh yeah, that is the way. It's just coming right off now. Alright, don't know if you can see that, but that's looking really good. That is ready for paint. Now just the other side of this, and 2 more windows both sides, and I'll be ready to, well, I guess I'll be ready to putty that in there. Then I'll be ready to paint. Okay, so that's number 2. Now in this case, I had this big sliver break off this side here. I'm going to go ahead and glue it back on and just fix it with some masking tape to hold it in place. I want to get a little glue along this edge here. That's where that sliver's going back onto. Put some here. I'm not worried about too much glue because this is not going to be stained or varnished. It's going to be paint. As much glue as I can get on there. Push that in place. All right, that looks good. So then I'll take some masking tape. Hold that in place really well. All right, set this aside. When that glue dries, then I can sand this just like the rest of it. Meanwhile, I'll start number 3. I also want to say that these are just old windows I'm using for a fence, so I'm being pretty rough on them. This is not the right way to rehab some historical windows you have, something you love, came out of your grandparents' house, you want to keep it forever. You just want to be a lot more careful with that and find a way better video than this to show you how to rehab them. Now in each of these 3, there's one area here that's just slightly different than the others, and I think it was like the bottom edge of the inside of the window, and it's always been a little ragged, and I can't get to it any other way. So I'm using my little my little scraper. And again, I'm being kind of rough here. If you're really trying to restore a window, you got to be a lot more careful. I said it before, you'll probably say I said it more times. These are for a fence. I just get in there and scrape this out as best as I can. Some of it just kind of peels off even. Like this here. Now that was easier than most of them. But it really is going okay. The paint's really loose, so I want to get it off of there because I don't want to have to repaint this thing right away. I really don't want to have to repaint it ever. And something else you want to consider is whether or not you're sanding lead-based paint. I didn't even think about it till just this minute. Hopefully I'll be okay. There really wasn't that much of it. I tried not to breathe any in if I could. Please, when you're doing stuff, be a whole lot safer than I am, okay? Don't use me as an example of what's a safe thing to do. All right, I have no idea how this is going to go, if it's hard to do, easy to do. I'm sure with a little practice, I got a rag around here somewhere. Looking pretty big mess. Try it again. I think I need to go over that, I gotta say. This is a lot harder than I envisioned it can be. I've done a lot of caulking in corners like this, and with a regular caulking gun, I could lay down a pretty nice bead. All right, that's not perfect. Got a little gap there. I can come in and touch that up later, once this dries up a little bit. But I'm definitely not laying down a pretty nice bead right now. What the heck? Let's just keep going. Well, that's a lot better. I'm still getting this kind of ridge along there. That should scrape off once it sets up, at least partially sets up. I just kind of slide my putty knife along here, being sort of careful. You know, the way this is drying up here, I think it's old. I think it was just on the shelf too long and it really didn't feel right. And the way I don't know, the way it feels today, I think it was just been on the shelf too long and it was getting kind of old. That's my story and I'm sticking to it. All right, so that's the first coat on one side of these. It is unfortunately going to take a second coat. I'm not getting the coverage here. I really would have liked to, but that's okay because I can't even start painting the other side for at least a couple more days because the other side is where I used all of that glazing caulk, and I don't want to rush that. So in the meantime, while this first coat is drying, I'm going to go back outside and work on the fence itself. All right, finally getting back to the fence. I got distracted by different things. Well, one was working on the windows, and two, as you can see behind me, I brought the boat up over here because we are going boating this weekend, so I wanted to get a jump on it. This is the first time I've used it this year, so I wanted to make sure the motor starts and runs fine, clean the whole thing up. But now we're ready to go with that. So now I want to finally get back to the fence. I am anxious to get those panels up, and I want to get the windows in it just to see how that looks. All right, now the only problem I might have today is that it is 95 degrees out, and sometimes my camera will overheat and shut down when it's this warm, so I'm just going to get going and see how much I can get done before that happens. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I got this panel over here that I just took out and leaned over against a tree there. So I'm going to go ahead and set this in place first. Then I'm going to get the other two panels off of what we call the pantry there, our little plastic Costco shed. And I'll bring those over one at a time when I can set it in place because they're pretty heavy and they're hard to move around. So I want to be all set just to set it right in place the first time, and we'll go from there. Kind of falling apart. That's all right. Once it's in place, it'll be fine. These things are really heavy, so I'm just going to flip it all the way upside down and just kind of slide it over there. At least that's the plan. That was heavy, but I got it. So, it's way too high here. I'm gonna have to trim the bottom of those little legs off to go down because my concrete's higher than the other concrete was. Well, that looks pretty close. So now I'm going to go ahead and run my string line so I can get it, maybe not perfect, but pretty close. I definitely want to pre-drill all these because this wood is old and brittle and wants to split. So that'll give me a lot better chance of success here. I like to run my string line an inch above my work. That way I'm not accidentally pushing it with some of the panels. I can see the string is free all the way. Then I can just recheck it with my tape measure at the post to make sure I'm maintaining that inch. And it's 97 degrees now. I gotta trim those a little more. This time I'm gonna throw a screw into the post, because last time as it was almost through, I wanted to go down and it was binding on my saw. Now I just want to lift that a little, take the pressure off. Should be fairly easy to cut. I should have taken off more in the first place. Got it. It looks like the same problem. I think that's a little less than an inch. So I'll go ahead and do it. All right, now it'll go. All right. Okay, that looks pretty good. Got it nice and straight. Let's get it fastened in here properly. And then the next thing I want to do is take out some of these boards here, because this is where the windows are going to go. And on the ones that exploded when the fence fell over and they're all in pieces, some of these panels here have broken off. So I should be able to use the broken ones to fill in below the window to save these intact ones for rebuilding the old panels. Now I still have a lot of work to do out there at the fence, but it's 95 degrees today, and this time of day the sun is just blazing down in that area where I'll be working. I know in a couple hours or so I'm going to have some shade there and it'll still be warm, but at least I won't be getting fried by the sun. Anyway, I need to make something to mount the windows to. The fence boards are only about a ½ inch thick, so I can't really mount to that. I got to make something to make sort of a framework in there to really solidly mount the windows to. Now I want to make it out of redwood, and you know how I love to use up the material I have here on hand. So what I'm going to do is take the posts that had broken off, and I'm going to, on my table saw here, I'll mill them down to the right size to make a framework that'll go inside the fence to really have those windows mounted in there well. Should be everything I need. Now these three pieces are going to be the verticals that go on each side of the windows. Now just to make it look a little more like the rest of the fence, I'm going to cut a half lap joint on these because I want it to overlap the bottom rail of the fence. Now it might be kind of hard to visualize, but it'll make sense once we get them out there and put them on. I'll just finish those up by hand. Now I just need to cut them to the exact length. Now this is one of the pieces of those fence boards that kind of exploded. Now they've all got this groove in them like this that the little fence boards fit into. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same on these, but also at the top of my posts I want to notch it so it has a little tongue that fits into this groove. Makes it a little more work, but I think it's going to make it a lot stronger. 15, 16. Fit into the existing piece that I have there and see how that goes. Now I got to get some grooves down along the sides of these, just like the verticals on the original fence panels have. So the grooves. Now initially I thought the grooves were going to be fairly simple, but the first problem is I don't really have the right tool I need to make them. Ideally, what you do is you have what's called stacked dado cutters, which is a bunch of saw blades that you kind of put all together until they're exactly the width of the groove you need. But you can't just use any old saw blades. It has to be dado blades, and I don't have a set of those. So the next thing is, I know if I just try and do it with my router, it's going to wander around way too much. I'm going to make a giant mess. So on this test piece here, I ran it through and made 2 saw cuts. And those are going to be the defining edges of the groove. Then I came back in with the router, and real carefully, I was routing out the waste part. Now that worked out okay, but there's one thing I really didn't like about it. Right along this edge here, you can see where I kind of bumped along the edge there with the router. I'm just not going to be happy with that, but my solution is to make these saw cuts just a little narrower than they need to be. Then I'll go back in there with the router, take out all the waste. I'm going to almost invariably bump the sides a little bit. And then I'm going to move the fence over just a little bit to where the blade's exactly where it needs to be, run it through again, and that should smooth out to actually cut off any of my little ridges or router errors. It only took about, just under 45 minutes, maybe about 45 minutes. And I figure another 15 minutes for the saw cuts before and after. So really only about an hour into this. Now if I was going to do a whole lot of these, I'd set up either a jig or maybe go to my shaper and get that all set up. But anything else I would have done probably would have taken 2 or 3 times as long. This was as good a way as any to do it. That looks pretty good. It's not perfect, but the little bumps and ridges are really slight, and I can live with that. Now the first thing I want to do here is cut off some of these lower branches. Because they're going to be leaning on top of the fence. I guess I could have done that before and they'd have been out of my way, but I'll do it now. I don't know if you've noticed, but I have these plywood extensions going up above the fence. But when the neighbors built next door, they put a shiny metal roof on. It throws this big glare right on our windows and all. So this one was still up from before. Just need to straighten it out. Well, I got that. Now the plywood goes on from the outside, so I'm gonna need a ladder next. First I want to get some screws in my pocket. What could go wrong? All right, that was probably the hardest part of the whole job. Well, I guess digging out the posts were kind of tough. But next, I have a piece that I can put right on top of there. I'll just use these strips here. There's some other offcuts from making all the other pieces. Kind of trims out the bottom, and I'll be able to screw that plywood to it from the back side. So now these boards are put in by a staple, kind of shown at an angle there. Okay, I think that'll do it. It's finally time to get the windows in. Now, I think the easiest way to do it is just to hold the window in place. I'll put a screw in the top to hold it where it belongs, and then I'll put the center post in against it. Do the same with the other window in the next post. At any rate, I think it's going to look real cool. All right, I think you can probably hear the landscapers next door making a lot of noise. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hold these pieces in place and measure for the fence boards that go below the windows. Then I'll head over into the shop and cut those where it's not so noisy. Go to the shop, rip this down, move the window in place, and this one will be good. All right, that looks pretty good. Quiet now, you hear that? All right, looking good. This one was a little harder. I'm gonna call it a day now because that needs a little adjustment. I'm getting tired. They're gonna start making mistakes. Plus it's Martini Friday, no healthy food allowed. I'm going in tomorrow. I got plenty of time to finish this up. All right, finally, the last little section here and the fence will be done. I got all the little fence boards cut, hopefully to the right length for down there. And I went ahead and filled in the last couple pieces here on the full height ones and the same on the other side of the windows. So let's push that out of the way. Set these guys in place. Very nice. I kicked over my screws again. I know, I could move them farther out of the way, but then when I need one, I gotta go over there and get it. Bud, come here. Come here, Bud. How you doing? Yeah. It's about an hour before dinner time, and I know he's just coming out to ask me to come in and feed him, but he's gotta wait an hour still. But that's it. It's all done. I think it looks really cool. This is just how I hoped it would look. Now hopefully we will be able to see that flower bed from the kitchen window, but if not, I still love the look of it. So either way, it's going to be great. Nothing left to do now but pick up all my stuff. It's going to take me at least a half hour to get this cleaned up and call it a day.